What's up, everybody?
What the heck is that, everybody? Happy Wednesday, my gamers.
Right? It is Wednesday. That is true. We are at the hump day. And we're
We're
one
the
day
hump
away
day.
from the big Xbox event
We
going
are
down.
big Xbox event tomorrow. There's a lot of articles that's like, it's Thursday, and we're like, we already know. You don't have to tell us.
Right? It's like I
Our
think I even
chat
saw
already
one that
knows.
was like one more night of sleep. Get to see more of the Xbox Series X. I was like,
Nice.
that individual is hardcore.
What's up, everybody? Gamers, Sequasi, Philip, Coombs, Kai, Val.
All the DGN
Sally,
fam.
Bad,
What's going
Ray.
on?
What's up, everybody? Welcome, early gang, early game. We've got a lot of news for you today. We're going to be doing a big deep dive into the PSVR, but first, we have a topic about Sucker Punch.
Yeah, so Sucker Punch decided to share its thoughts regarding the DualSense, specifically the haptic feedback, also the possibility of the Ghost of Tsushima on PS5.
Sucker Punch's latest hit, Ghost of Tsushima, just got out on PlayStation 4, and a lot of gamers already love it, especially some of you in the chat. With beautiful environments, exciting gameplay, intense story, and cinematic modes to experiment on, the game has provided players with so much fun that Twitter is filled with gorgeous screenshots and clips from it.
And since then, Sucker Punch has been able to relax and breathe with just trying to get the feel on what to improve from the feedback they get from the gaming community. Aside from that, they can now look forward to other things, like, for example, the next generation console, which is the PS5.
I love how this game's been out for like a few days, and they're like, what can we improve on? It's like there's no time to really relax for them. So Sucker Punch co-founder and producer Brian Fleming with art director and creative director Jason Connell talk about what they are excited about for the next gen console.
So for Connell, he's not been able to think much about the PS5 because he was particularly focused on the Ghost of Tsushima, trying to get it out there in the public and the feedback from the gaming community.
Fleming, on the other hand, shared his excitement and expectation for the next-gen console. He is, quote, nerdily excited about the haptic feedback in the DualSense controller.
I love that he uses that.
The nerdily excited.
Nerdily excited. So Fleming continues, and he says this: we talked about how we really love how controllers kind of connect you to the game, and anything that gives us more ability to give the player better tactile feedback about what's going on, I think will be a big deal. So I think for Sucker Punch, that's a particularly interesting area.
So the producer remembered their previous game, Infamous Second Son, with the spray can. The controller was a very essential tool in the game, which is why they felt Ghost of Tsushima will also make the controller have a significant role in game.
And Connell noted that making the controller have an important role is like embedded studio philosophy already. Ghost of Tsushima players will need the wind to give them direction, which is why the controller assists them in the way of flicking through the touchpad. Also, the wind audio comes through the little speaker in it, which was the suggestion of their audio guy because he thought it was cool. It's true, you just swipe that pad and then you see the wind come up, and that's where you know where to go.
That's so cool. So in relation to the PS5, they were asked if the game will be coming to the next-gen console in the future, like getting an upgrade or anything similar. Fleming gave a little hint that there might be a chance it will be coming to that particular console, and he did say there will be more information in the weeks to come since they're still busy with their transition from work.
And hopefully there will be some news about the PS5 since it will be a big upgrade for Ghost of Tsushima. Just take a moment and imagine thinking and seeing these environments in the game, but with a better hardware pushing it, which means more polished, more visuals are polished. And just imagine the photos we're seeing now from the PS4 Pro when people post them, and those photos coming out from the PlayStation 5.
I think it's really cool that they're incorporating the wind into the controller because this game, it doesn't really look like you're following like a guideline of where your next mission will be, or you're really just like, looking at the map so much. It's just you're following the wind, you're exploring on your own. And I think it's cool that they've added that like guiding force into the controller so you feel it as well as see it on the screen.
Yeah, they've done an amazing job with how this game just feels overall. And there's just so many moments when while you're playing, you'll just like stop and be like, gotta take a photo. And you can adjust the whole lighting, you can adjust the depth of field. And then you go back to playing. And then the next thing you know, you're like, cool moment, stop, take another photo. And it's just like, it already looks so good when you see it that my brain going, well, what is that visual upgrade for the PlayStation 5? Just thinking that, the nanite demoed for Unreal 5. I'm just like, I can't even imagine what these photos. It will probably just be like, where is that? Can I go there? Because that looks like a real place.
Right. I love that. And it makes me think that I would want like gamers to also take more photos in real life. I feel like I hear so much of like, just stop and smell the flowers. And in Ghost of Tsushima, people are going, photo mode, this is so cool. And it's like, in real life, also do that. Take photos of yourself in real life as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that is really exciting is there's a lot of the discussion on the haptic feedback, especially with games with like sword fighting. And this whole thing is nonstop feeling the power of hitting your sword against another one, whether you block it or you're hitting someone's shield, and just that sense of the controller giving the feedback as if you were to hit someone's shield and it was blocked. You know what I mean? So that immersion, I can already imagine Sucker Punch is excited to get to work on including this. As we know, it will drop for PlayStation 5.
And I think those changes also make me play games differently. For example, if I'm drawing back an arrow and the controller vibrates more the more I pull it back, I'll actually shoot according to what I feel on the controller versus like seeing on the screen how far the arrow is drawn back. And I agree. I think it'd be really cool to see that with the sword play, how you block, how you dodge. Maybe there's a feeling of like hitting the ground when you dodge, or when you do get hurt, you get feedback in that controller as well. UB says, hi there, I pre-ordered Watch Dogs 3. Is that a mistake?
I don't think it is a mistake, and I love how it's just like,
so funny.
Hey, you guys are talking about Ghost of Tsushima, but I did pre-order Watch Dogs. What do you guys think? We did talk about Watch Dogs. We're skeptical because the other ones in the past have performed. So we'll see. It's got big ambitions, so you could be in a good position there.
Looks cool, but we'll have to see if it'll actually execute. Unlike Ghost of Tsushima, which promised a lot and gave gamers a lot. And
it really, that's the thing there too, is I think that one of the things to comment on about that question, along with just current gaming, culture, is it is okay to wait for a game to come out before you decide to put money down. Now, if you're doing the cheap pre-order and you got it, I understand. But just to give the full price up front for a series like Watch Dogs, which has been a tumultuous pass. And then we look at, what Sucker Punch has delivered with Ghost of Tsushima and with Infamous Second Son. I would say the next Sucker Punch game is an easy pre-order because of how consistent they've been.
And with pre-orders, some people are like, why would you pre-order a digital game? You can download it earlier and maybe play it 20 minutes earlier, but there's no real reason, because usually when you pre-order a physical copy, that means they'll like ship one to you and you'll make sure there's one in stock, versus there's always going to be a digital option. However, apparently for some developers, especially smaller developers, this is similarly for book sales as well. If you pre-order it, it actually really matters a lot to some of these clients, or maybe Steam or to media. And the more pre-orders there are, the more publicity there will be about a game. So especially about smaller games, I recommend pre-ordering. Games like Watch Dogs, you can pre-order, but you don't really need to. Maybe something cool comes with the pre-order, like a special, items in the game, something like that. But just wanted to throw that out there, that sometimes pre-orders really do matter.
And I like this question from King Marquez. The one thing that I'll say is, it's hard to say game of the year right now, because you do look at Ghost of Tsushima and you're like, this game has all of the ingredients you need for game of the year. The Last of Us Part 2, or The Last of Us 2 is another one that could very well take that title. But let's not forget Cyberpunk 2077 is not too far away and still could be a contender for game of the year. So between those three, from what we've seen and talked about with Cyberpunk 2077, my vote would be an early vote for Cyberpunk 2077.
The Game of the Year awards are for the calendar year, right? It's not weird like how the Oscars do it, or like the Grammys do it.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's a big competition with Ghost of Tsushima, Cyberpunk 2077, The Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy Remake, at least for a lot of graphics. I think if it were on its own, it would absolutely be up there. But since it is a remake, I feel like that kind of docks some points, because it's not, purely original content that's being created. This is a good year for gamers and games, surprisingly, with everything that's going on.
It really is. And the next story that we're going to do is sort of like I would say it's kind of like a new segment when we have a topic that we really want to dive deep into, because we find this very, very significant. This is kind of like a benchmark moment in the virtual reality technology, is that the Dreams on PlayStation has released its PSVR update. So you can now go in and create your own dreams in virtual reality.
And we've been looking forward to this for a long time. So for those of you who don't know what Dreams is, it's a game where you can create games, essentially. It gives you all the tools to, create environments. People have remade the Silent Hill games, a lot of games like Super Mario, and they'll actually, really emulate them. And if you play them, they're very similar to the real thing. So they make it a lot easier for you to create your own games. So Dreams PSVR support finally becomes a reality this week with a free update to the PS4 title today, July 22nd. But there's still a lot we don't know about the promising integration. Creative director Mark Healy helped clue us in a little.
So Upload VR spoke with Healy last week to learn as much as possible about the ins and outs of Dream's PSVR integration. And based on that talk with Healy, there's 11 things that have been learned from that interview.
So you can play all of Dreams' existing content with it. And Media Molecule has clarified to Upload VR that existing content in Dreams will automatically be marked as non-VR when the update goes live. This means that players cannot access the content inside VR. However, authors can go in and enable VR support themselves. If they first access the content inside PSVR itself, they can label the content as VR compatible or VR only. If they don't have access to a VR headset, they can mark it as not sure, which lets VR players access the content if they opt into seeing not sure experiences in their filters. These experiences will come with a warning too. You can read more about it. We're going to drop that link in chat. And this week, another interview this week also clarifies that the game's single-player campaign Art Dreams is not playable in VR.
When you first launch Dreams, there is a single-player campaign that helps you understand how to use Dreams, and they do it in a fun narrative way. So that's what that is discussing. And honestly, this is exciting because Healy also acknowledges how hectic it could get. And this is what Healy says. He says whether that actually ends up being good or not is going to be a bit random because people don't necessarily make that to be VR. He said later, pointing to a recent play session where he'd jump into a first-person shooter only to discover the scale was entirely off.
He says, it's just hilarious because I was walking down the road with this hand and this gun that was the size of a house. He says it was ridiculous, but it's kind of cool that he see that,
Really
for a lot of games in Dreams, a lot of them are also works in progress. They're seldom finished products. So you'll play some games and you might feel that the controls are off or it's a little bit clunky because these are just, people creating these games. It takes a lot of time to make one. I think I would really like to, but I also definitely if I have too many options, I get creative block where I'm like, there's too much. I could do anything. I can't think of anything that I really want to do or make.
Very, very much so. And that's the other thing too, is like Dreams can just be this space where you want to just go in and experience other people's dreams or play around with other people's dreams and never have to create your own. I'm right there with you, Kaisa. One of the things that Healy said that I thought was really cool is this note here that authors, those who are creating the dreams, can turn VR off or make it exclusives, saying that if you're creating something with a specific vision in mind, there's a good chance that VR doesn't fit into that. For that eventuality, Healy says that Media Molecule will give players the option to turn it off, while also on the flip side, you can make it VR exclusive.
And he reasons that we've given authors of any content the ability to say, actually, this is VR only, or this is not for VR, or this actually works in both VR and non-VR. But it's just fun that the default is everything just works.
And then the other thing that he went on to say is there are smart and optional comfort settings. Of course, with all this unwieldy potential, it would be a little irresponsible not to provide some comfort tweaks, like a giant gun, a gun the size of a house. A house gun. And those are all there, and they're turned on by default, but the team has also come with some very smart solutions for existing content.
I love the comment in the chat that's I want to play with people's dreams. Sounds so ominous. So Healy explains, let's say someone's made a simple thing where you've got a character walking around the landscape. There's a default setup for that in Dreams, and that is that the camera will follow the character and you can rotate around. If you have these comfort settings on, that changes. The same piece of content, you can still play it, but now the camera's fixed. Obviously, you can still look around, the character walks a certain distance, and then the camera will just teleport, essentially.
So even with these options, we're wagering a large amount of existing content will be very strange to experience in VR. But these are also smart inclusions at the same time, and there are no extra limits to how much you can build, which is another surprising fact. That creator mode with Dreams PSVR support won't impose any additional limits.
EG says, what is this game? So Dreams is essentially a game where you can create other games. And I believe it's PlayStation exclusive, right?
It is. You can only get this experience on PlayStation.
So you'll be able to create the exact same content you could on PS4 without the worry of hitting any early memory limits. And one reason for this is some players will want to use VR to make non-VR games. Healy says, I think it's very valid to use VR to make a non-VR experience, actually, because of the extra intuitiveness you get from sculpting and the 3D space, which I think is so cool because creating 3D things in a 2D format, I can see how there's a limitation on that, or it might be easier or better for, creatives to actually go in and see like, oh, like this looks really weird from a VR perspective.
Right. That's the part too, is like to think that you can create these games and you can go in and get next to everything in virtual reality and create what you need. Like right now we're looking at a Dream where it's like a city street. You could go in and create that car entirely in VR and then place it in there. But when the person plays it, it's, the background of a 2D side-scrolling adventure. That's because the game allows you to create it that way, which is just, it's mind-blowing, but also my hat's off to Media Molecule for recognizing that this feature would benefit people who don't want to create VR content.
I think they've really made, such a powerful tool. I feel like I still haven't heard a lot about Dreams, or maybe it came out and people think it's just something that's gimmicky and not actually powerful, but this seems very powerful. There is so much you can do with this. I think anyone who's even, thinking about wanting to be a game developer could go into Dreams and see like, hey, this is something that I really want to do. This is an industry that I'd really like to explore and invest my time in.
So they also go on to talk about, if you are investing more of your time into it and you are worried about these limitations, there are contingencies for when it becomes too much, because inevitably everyone has some sort of issue with VR early on. I myself experienced that. I think, Kaisa, we talked about that a little bit. It takes a minute to get used to, but once you've done it enough, you do get used to it.
And so some of the you'll be able to get used to it. I think it's cool that they have those comfort things to, help offset that. Usually I don't get any motion sickness when I play VR, but then I went on a VR roller coaster and I played Echo VR and I felt sick and I was like, I need to sit down. I just need to stay in place. I think some games will just kind of trigger that, especially if it's like a zero gravity thing and your mind isn't used to processing, what it looks like to move in zero gravity. So I'm glad that they are really accounting for that and adding some of these comfort things in there. What's up, Mike? Welcome to the stream.
Hey, Mike, welcome.
There are some contingencies for when things get too much in VR in Dreams. So inevitably, some of the content that you can play in Dreams just won't run well in PSVR. And for those moments, Media Molecule has an intriguing and, again, optional solution to boot you out to PSVR cinema mode.
So Healy goes on in this interview saying, we will automatically kick you out into a sort of virtual cinema mode on the PlayStation, but you can, in the menus, opt out of that if you like. So you can be... you can't be the type to say, I don't care, just give it to me, even if it's at a low frame rate.
The platform can also dynamically change the resolution to help cope with demand. But again, we'd imagine some of Dream's most ambitious existing games will have your PS4 shuddering. I love how there aren't really any limitations on how big your game can be. They're like, maybe it can't handle it, but you can try to do it. Like, just build away.
This is one of those, conversation points of like, I really hope to see a Dreams for PS5, because if the PlayStation 5, if Dreams gets the PlayStation 5 upgrade, you're looking at a system that is going to allow you to crank out full games, like not just small, hey, here's like a, here's a short little experience. Like this is a game where you can create an entire game. If you have enough people working on it, or you're just that person that wants to do it by yourself, you could have a full-fledged third-person free roam open world game inside of Dreams, because they didn't put any of those, governors, so to speak, on it.
Thank you so much, Kai, for the $10 dono.
Hey,
Thanks
thank
so
you,
much.
Kai.
I think it's cool that there's no limitations as well, because as you said, the PS5 will probably be able to handle it. So you could spend, I'm sure it'll probably take months to build a game that's big enough to overload your PlayStation 4. And then when the PS5 comes out, you're like, hey, now I've got a machine that can actually, run this game as intended. This game is just so ambitious and robust. I'm really excited to see what kind of things will come out of it with VR. Hopefully we'll see a lot more VR experiences, VR games, something new and interesting. I think there's been a lot of VR has a lot of cool stuff, but I think the limits haven't really been pushed enough. I don't think there's enough stuff about zero gravity that you wouldn't be able to experience in like a normal video game, or those kinds of experiences. Maybe there's like a submarine, maybe it's like Subnautica, but in VR. I think a lot of those ideas haven't really been, thoroughly explored.
Agreed. Yeah. And they go in to talk about the technology, the gadgets that are surrounding you. So it is addressed in the interview that there's new gadgets for putting things on your heads and hands. Like the first thing any of us do when we jump into VR is that we put a hat on our head, or we put some gloves onto our hand, or maybe you're, Cole Phelps in LA Noir's VR, or you grabbed a hard hat in Half-Life Alyx. There's just something honestly satisfying, and it's a reaffirmation that the technology works when you can just do something as simple as picking up this object and putting it on my head and then just moving around with it. I know I did that with Half-Life Alyx. I put on the little gas mask to make it through the polluted areas, and I was just like, this is awesome. I just remember thinking that.
I don't think I played a game where I could put a hat on my head. I think the first thing I did in VR was during the training session in Oculus Quest. I think it's called First Steps. But you can like pick up ping pong paddles and stuff and play
around. And you dance with the robot?
And you dance with the robot. And the first thing I did was pick everything up and like throw it as far as I could, because in real life, I would never do that. But I'm like, it's VR. Like these objects are real. Yeah. Are we saying you could create GTA 6 on your own? You could try.
You could. And
theoretically.
Yes, they do give you all of the tools that you could make that attempt.
What's up, Buckley? You're like Alien Isolation in VR. Oh my God, I'd die. If I could create a VR game, I think it would absolutely be like a terrifying horror experience that I would never want to play.
Danganronpa in VR.
My God. Live my life in anime, finally. About this head tracker gadget, Healy says that, so if you want to put some big horns on there or an elephant trunk or whatever, it becomes really easy. And that also benefits the non-VR side of things too, because that just means in non-VR, it sticks to the player camera, which is cool.
It really is, because so they have these, these similar tools for your hands. So making it easy to customize a pair of virtual hands for first-person experiences, or stick items like weapons into them.
Media Molecule made some new content too. So this week's update won't just drop its tools without warning. Media Molecule will also help ease you into VR with Inside the Box, which is a virtual gallery of exhibits and games to tease the potential of VR support.
So Healy talks about this. He says it's basically a big kind of brutalist architecture gallery space that you can go into. We've got a bunch of sort of interactive sculptures and exhibits if you like, and there's actually 3 games we've made in there too. There's a puzzle game, a shooty game, and a platformer game. He said shooty game.
It's the quotes.
Yeah, and each of those games also comes with a modular kit, so you can easily make extra levels for that type of game.
I think that's a fantastic demo of like, look at all the things you can do, and you can change it right now if you want, and we're going to give you the tools to change it. I also hope to refer to all shooty games as shooty games and not FPSs anymore. I think shooty sounds like the more official title. And I think it's definitely necessary that in VR, you get a sample of the things you can do, because I think oftentimes you just don't really think about all the
Right.
opportunities you can do in VR, or maybe you have, a certain schema or impression in your mind of what VR is, and then you go into it and you're like, what? Every time I make one of my friends try my Oculus Quest, they always go like, oh, I forgot how cool VR is. Like, I
Yeah,
know VR is cool, but like until you put the goggles back on, you like don't realize just like how cool it can be.
exactly.
So you can also make makeshift local multiplayer games. Dream's PSVR support won't include Sony's social screen integration, which gives people outside of VR a separate view on the TV to control a different character with. Healy says that feature could come if there's demand for it, but you could also just hand over a controller to someone else while you're in VR to play as another character.
And this one's a really interesting one because I think when we learned about what happened with people recreating Mario in Dreams, and Nintendo issued those legal papers to make sure that that
Yes.
stuff is stopped.
Be careful of Nintendo and Disney in Dreams.
Is that if you are probably setting out on your first creation in Dreams VR, it's likely you might want to make yourself a lightsaber. But they do go on to say that, this is a thing that you can do, but there are companies that want to protect their own IP, and Dreams is no stranger to the battle against letting people make what they want.
So if you make a lightsaber, be sure to name it an energy prodder or something else that doesn't sound as strange. Having been available since February and in early access long before then, Dreams is no stranger to battles against letting people make what they want and companies wanting to protect their own IP. So if you make something, just be careful, even though you're not making any money off of it. You could ruffle some feathers. Hopefully that doesn't, advance into legal action. But make sure to at least take some precautions if you're, pulling things that are, heavily protected under law.
Yeah, so Healy and Co. have always strived to encourage and promote original content on the platform, though Healy does liken making themed content to learning guitar covers to help them get better, which is a wonderful example of, seeing recreations of like Mario in Dreams. And obviously there are things everyone wants to do in virtual reality, like wielding a lightsaber or swinging from building to building as Spider-Man. You will be able to do that in this, but you'll just need to be careful with how you frame it.
I love how Kane says, oh yeah, Nintendo, then I'll make Gario siblings instead of Mario Brothers. The famous Gario siblings. Incredible. So Keeley says, whether the VR thing is going to introduce more of that or not, I don't know. But as you say, a lightsaber is probably one of the things that everyone is going to want to make, I imagine. They're just going to have to call it something else, like a light stick or something, or an energy prodder. And we've seen that in the mods of Half-Life Alyx, a lightsaber was one of the first things that was created, by the modding community.
Yeah, I love MFA there, who's like, Ouija. It's Gario and Ouija.
Ouija. Someone please make that in Dreams.
I need to see it right now. Now, the other thing that they did talk about is something that we know of. If you have a PSVR or any VR, you understand that there are peripherals that you can buy to make the experience more immersive. And they did address with the PlayStation VR, the aim controller might actually get support on the Dreams VR, but it's really dependent on the demand for it. So Dreams might not actually be a first-person shooter itself, but you can bet people are going to start making great VR shooters right off the bat. So what about the support for Sony's rifle-shaped aim controller?
The device, best seen in Farpoint and Firewall Zero Hour, can do wonders for VR immersion and would make for another brilliant tool to the Dreams arsenal.
Healy says, something that's come up a few times is people asking about aim support, and that specific peripheral was made. So if there was, will it be made for that specific peripheral? And he says, if there is a big demand for that, I don't see any reason why we couldn't add it.
I wonder how many peripherals there will be. And I think I want to take a look at this. What is it called again? The rifle-shaped aim controller? Is there a name
it's
for
an
that?
aim controller. That's what it is. I have one for my PSVR.
How is it?
It's amazing. Like you can play Doom VR with it, Firewall Zero Hour with it, Farpoint. It does make the first-person shooter in VR experience that much better, I will say.
It's for those of you who don't know, it's kind of a frame loosely gun shaped, and there's a trigger, and there's the
joysticks on the back, so you can still move around and then point.
And yeah, there's a sensor right at the end of it to make it easier to aim. I think that's cool. That's way better than a few years ago at a convention. There was like a gun mod controller that was really just the controller on the side buttons, but the controller looked like a gun itself, but you couldn't actually really point and move it. So this is a big upgrade.
It really is. And I think there's something that is being speculated about these possibilities, is that this could actually open up some floodgates again. Potentially a very significant release for Dreams is user-created VR content, because that is one of the most promising areas of this new industry, something that we're excited about, because we can already see that there are amazing art apps like Tilt Brush and Quill that are doing very well. And if you go onto YouTube, you can find people who are being hired to go to places all over the world to create amazing art pieces in VR.
Dreams represents a chance to raise that bar, offering a robust, accessible toolset on a platform much more welcoming to most consumers, and then giving them the chance to go a step further and turn their content into games.
Healy was asked if the team has considered what a milestone for VR could be. And he says he hadn't quite thought much about it, but he does agree that the potential is there, like EG was saying right there, like this is the future.
He says it's like sort of crowdsourcing what VR experiences can be, in my mind, putting it in the hands of the PlayStation community, giving them the opportunity just to express whatever crazy ideas come into their mind without the baggage or having to please a publisher or worry about whether it's going to make money or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And that's when Healy finished by saying, I think it could be really liberating and potentially be really exciting. It could open up almost all new sorts of genres or ways of thinking about what VR can be.
I agree. It is like crowdsourcing. I think it's cool that, people are creating this without necessarily trying to make money off of it or having to bend to a studio. I think making something in Dreams could be part of your portfolio, honestly, if you're looking for a job as a creative, to be like, hey, this is what I did. I storyboarded this. I mapped this out. I actually, made it into a game. Like, even though working in Dreams isn't exactly like working in Unreal Engine or anything that's more technical, there's still a skill there. And I think even the discipline of creating a game and adding all the textures to the environment, and setting the tone and creating the story, I think is really impressive in and of itself.
I think you just hit something on the head there. Is like there are aspects of game design that Dreams does not help you possibly get a job in, but there are aspects it does. And like the writing, game directing, the actual, the production of it, all of those things that are necessary for the completion of a game to be the experience that it is, other than just the coding and the gameplay. There's a lot there that, yes, you could show this off. You could say, this is what I did, or me and my team made this in Dreams, and we just need to work with people on a different scale of Unreal Engine technology or, any other type of coding, and possibly find themselves getting work. I mean, this could be huge for indie developers to actually say, hey, look at what I was a part of. Can I be a part of your team?
Mm-hmm. This reminds me a lot of Dan Salvato with Doki Doki Literature Club, where he made that game it's free on Steam. It's one of my all-time favorite games, and it's absolutely free. And from what I've heard, he kind of made it as a resume or kind of as a portfolio project to show people. And after that, now he's really respected for the work that he did on that project. And I'm sure he could work for other studios if he wanted to, or at least I'd very much hope so. Similarly, or a little bit different, but I know Concerned Ape with Stardew Valley was just a one-person project that took about 3 years or so to create. I think there's a lot that you can do on your own with these kinds of tools. To create, as you said, with game direction, with writing, I think there's a big opportunity there. And this just makes me think of some of the people that I know in my life who have wanted to work in video games, and they would say, like, I want to work in video games, but my parents would look down on me if I went to school for it. I want to work in video games, but it's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. It's too out of reach. And I'm saying, no, it is not at all. Not at all. I've seen some people at LCS even who'd walk up to the League of Legends tournament with a portfolio and like go and meet people and actually got a job in gaming and worked in, I think, like writing or English or something before then. And so if you want to get into the game industry, I think this is a good place to potentially start, is with Dreams.
Yeah, and I would say that Media Molecule has put together, the game to create all games from. And to say, like, they took a line of thinking that was very easy when you just apply it as like, well, what are all the things you need in order to make a game? And let's throw those all into a bucket, and then you move through each bucket to get to what you need. The wonderful part about Dreams that we've talked about before that I think is going to be seen in VR is you don't really need to like go through the entire steps to open a door by, I got to create the switch, I got to make sure that this button is linked to that button and it opens the door. People are already creating those things in Dreams. So you might be sitting there and saying, creating something's just going to take me a long time. That's not necessarily true. A lot of the assets just sit there. People create them and they're like, hey, here's a switch that I created so you can use this to open something. Here's a platform that moves that I created so you can just throw it in there and you need a platform to be able to do this. All these things that we already know we use and see all the times in games. There are people that their free time is just to create these things so you can pull them into your dream and they can see when you use them in their worlds. And I think it's just a wonderful community of people trying to help each other, which is really kind of like what we want out of the gaming community, if not humanity.
Definitely. I like how you said that there's people that are creating those assets like down to the nitty gritty of, how you interact and like the hinges on the door and things. There are people who like doing it. Let them enjoy their work. If you don't, you can, I like how there's a lot of, sharing of resources in this community. Yes, exactly. Pipe dreams, go for it. Follow your dreams. Hashtag not sponsored by PlayStation Dreams.
Gario siblings wouldn't exist if I didn't dream it.
That's true. I really want to see this trend take off even more. I wouldn't even call it a trend. I think it's just really the next step in gaming. Because I think that a lot of times when I think of game developer, I think of those people who do work, at the very particular base level, but also you don't necessarily need to do that. It's like if you're building a house, you don't go grow the trees and cut down the trees to have the wood. Like you buy the wood, you use, you use
somebody can send you the parts. Yeah.
Right. Someone can send you the parts. Like when I build a PC, most of the work has been done for me, but that doesn't make, me putting it together, any less valid really. I think this is a great next step. A lot of games that have come out are games that were, modded or altered or creative. We've talked about Dota 2, how that was a community mod. And I think that we're going to see a lot of really cool games out of this. We're going to see cool stories. I think we're probably, maybe in a year or two going to see some articles of like, this hit game was created in Dreams, by someone who didn't really work in games before. I think we're going to see a lot of, new creative minds come to the space. I think it's also really cool that artists can go and, make these worlds in Dreams as well. I could see, so many possibilities and just so much potential. And you could like learn instruments in Dreams. You can create art in Dreams. You could probably design architecture in Dreams. There's so many uses, both game wise and just practically speaking.
The thing about Dreams, to why we said early on that this is a benchmark for virtual reality is there is the now Half-Life Alyx has this space similar to like Gary's mod where you're making your own, changes and you have like this sandbox to create in. The difference with Dreams is it's specifically designed for this versus here's a, an extra, modded community playground that we've created from Half-Life Alyx. Dreams set out to be this space, and we always knew there was going to be VR support. They had always addressed that to be the case. And for Healy to acknowledge that we might see new genres come out from this, what does that inspire these major studios to do? What happens when these, a place like Sucker Punch or Epic Games decides to go through and look at some Dreams and get inspiration off of what the community is creating in there, and then we get games delivered to us in a year or two that have been inspired by this playground that exists. It's to say is this is where I think it's safe to say where VR is going to go from here. I think is drastically going to change from what we see it now currently in the masses to what it's about to become. In maybe a year, if not two, I think we're seeing a strong interest going to start growing for virtual reality.
I think so too. Chad says, "Don't let your dreams be dreams. Make them in dreams. Make your dreams in dreams, rather." I agree. I think we're going to see, a big change. I know the PSVR is expensive. If there's a PSVR 2, which we think is coming out, that I hope that's not even more expensive. I understand the technology is very expensive, but I just hope to see VR become more accessible to people, because it's cool that all this VR stuff is being created, but at the end of the day, if most people can't play it, then it doesn't really propel the industry forward. If it's not even profitable either, to create VR. I don't know how long it'll take, but I hope the prices do eventually come down, and that buying a VR set, especially maybe PSVR, where it's already tied to the console, won't break the bank, and is something that gamers will be able to afford without it being kind of a product they have to save up all year for.
Yeah, and for anybody in chat who might be like, you know what, I do have a PS4. I am considering the PSVR. Dreams sounds really cool. I can spend $40 on Dreams and get an endless amount of content and games. The one thing that Sony has said regarding the PSVR is the current PSVR will work with the PS5. So it's not that the technology just stops at the PlayStation 4. It will mean that the technology for the PSVR 2 will be a headset that will handle the full, specifications that you can get out of the new hardware, but you can still use your old hardware on the PlayStation 5 to still work within VR. So just consider that for if you're like, hey, I might not be able to afford a PS5 and a PSVR 2 when it happens, but I'd really like to be able to experience these things when next gen drops. You will be able to.
And there's a lot of support for updates as well. I know with my Oculus Quest, now it can have finger tracking. It'll track your fingers, based on the cameras, and they add new features such as casting to your TV, which they didn't have available beforehand. So I think that, I feel like probably the same thing will happen with the PlayStation VR, that, a lot of updates, keep coming to the device that you don't need a hardware update for. And, those set of goggles will last you a while.
Yeah, agreed. But moving on from our deep dive into Dreams PSVR, we got a couple games we're going to talk about today that are coming out really soon. One of which, when I read a little bit more about it, I was like, oh, this is a really cool update to this series, as Yakuza's Like a Dragon will be coming out in November.
Yakuza Like a Dragon releases this November in the West, according to Sega, and it was confirmed today.
And they also went in to talk about how that the Xbox Series X versions will be released this holiday, and also the PlayStation 5 version later this year. And it's also been confirmed that a PlayStation 5 upgrade path is being planned for the Western release.
The PC system requirements have also been revealed, and it starts out saying the minimum that you're going to need for this is a 64-bit processor and operating system, Windows 8.1 OS, an Intel i7 or an AMD FX 8350 for processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, for graphics card, an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660 with 2 gigabytes of memory, or an AMD Radeon HD 7870 with 2 gigabytes of memory, and 40 gigabytes of storage space available.
And they went on to say the recommended specs are the 64-bit processor operating system, Windows 10, the Intel Core i7 or AMD Ryzen 5, 8 gigs of RAM, a GTX 1060 with 3 gigs of RAM, or RX 58 for 4 gigs of RAM, and storage space of 50 gigs available will be the recommended for this title.
I'm surprised that it recommends an i7 processor, because I have a Ryzen 5, which is comparable to the i5, and most games run on that. So they're saying that, like, hey, like for the minimum, you might need something better for this.
Yeah.
So Yakuza Like a Dragon shakes the series' tried and true formula by introducing a new protagonist for the first time ever, as well as a turn-based combat system.
Yakuza Like a Dragon has this new protagonist. For the first time since the series' inception over a decade ago, Ichiban Kasuga, a low-level Yakuza member looking to prove his worth, and it follows him and his motley crew of unlikely allies as they attempt to rise from rags to riches in this modern human drama.
From the trailer, it's not like he's some big mob boss as he comes out of prison and no one's there for him, and his family's not there for him anymore, and he's like, what am I supposed to do? It's very different tonally.
Really?
So Like a Dragon is much more than just a new chapter in the Yakuza series. Much like the new English title itself, Yakuza Like a Dragon is a complete reimagining of the franchise, a landmark to coincide with the series' 15th anniversary. With the bulk of the game taking place in the large-scale, painstakingly realized setting of Ijincho in Yokohama, players will explore an entirely new side of Japan never before seen in the series. Not only that, but Yakuza Like a Dragon's combat system has undergone a major overhaul, combining Yakuza's established brawling action with the turn-based RPG battle system.
And it will launch this November on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. And as we said before, that the Xbox Series X as well as PlayStation 5 versions will release sometime holiday 2020. But that's a really cool thing that they're doing, adding the turn-based RPG aspect to the action that we know of for this series.
I think it's interesting, especially since in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they kind of took away some of the turn-based to kind of, I think now a lot of gamers maybe don't like turn-based, even though I do. I'm a big fan of turn-based games. But it's interesting that they're adding that back in. I think it's cool that they're reimagining the whole series. This comes at the same time that Ghost of Tsushima was released. So if you want to, play games where you explore Japan, there's a lot of new games, coming out for you to enjoy. I really like how the basis of the story is so not mafia, or so not Yakuza. I haven't played the other games. From what I know of the series, it's very kind of kitschy or campy, and it's supposed to be like really silly and over the top.
Yeah, I think that is one of the aspects of the series that I love. This is like when Saints Row and Grand Theft Auto would be talked about, and they'd be like, "Oh, which one's the better one?" And it's like, well, they're different, right?
They're different.
Saints Row started out kind of serious, but then it got more campy. And I would always say that I think the strength of Yakuza is it always set out to have some of this campy 80s action kind of feel to it. Everything a little bit over the top, extremely exaggerated. But they just, they've added in this system to slow things down, to give it this turn-based feeling. You still have this, action aspect to Yakuza that we know and we love. And I think we should still expect to get the outlandish stories that surround this, setting and this environment, and to learn like this new character. How much are we going to get out of this new character? Is this going to be like a new venture from here on out for the Yakuza series? Or is this going to be like a Rogue One kind of aspect for Star Wars where it's just a one-off and we'll go back to the main storyline on the next one?
Right. That's a good question, whether they're going to continue with this, if this is going to be kind of just a different, sidestep from the main series. Regardless, this game will be released on November in PC via the Windows Store and Steam, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And it's also a part of Comic-Con at Home, which is Comic-Con's, live streamed on YouTube, live streamed with pre-recorded panels, but streamed on YouTube, I believe, portion of Comic-Con. So it's cool. It's cool to see that we're hearing more about this series, and this game looks really good, honestly.
It does, yeah. And if anybody in chat checks it out, or you're a big fan of the Yakuza, please hop in, tell us what you think. I know this is a fresh take or a more updated take on an old gaming series, but there is a series, or at least a game, that has quite a lot of interest, specifically in the United States amongst kids, and that is Roblox.
And Roblox is now the game of choice for over half of all US kids, which when I read this, I was like, that seems wrong. But according to PC Gamer, it is.
So Roblox Corporation recently told The Verge that over half the kids in the US are now keeping in contact via Roblox. The global COVID-19 pandemic led to a sharp increase in active users throughout both March and April, totaling 2/3 of all US children under the age of 16. And since then, the numbers have apparently continued to reach their current all-time high of 120 million players.
Roblox is lit, yo. So currently, Roblox is also beta testing a system called Party Place, which reminds me of, Papaya Island or Party Royale in Fortnite. And Party Place in Roblox is a virtual social space players can use for meetups. Initially only available to Roblox's own developers, the private Party Place servers first became cheaper to use for private events and are now set to be available entirely for free. On April 18th, Roblox hosted its large One World virtual concert via Party Place.
And since the pandemic in the US has yet to show signs of slowing, it's honestly no surprise that children are increasingly trying to find ways to spend time with their friends while social distancing. Roblox is a gaming platform offering several different games and game creation tools using its own programming language. It has been around since 2004, and its most popular games have now been played millions of times. Players can participate in racers, obstacle courses, and more, largely geared towards younger players. Additionally, in-game items are available for purchase using Roblox, currently called Robux.
And for those of you who don't really know what Roblox is, because when I first heard of it, I was like, I don't really get it. It's just there's a whole library of community created mini games, pretty much. So it's like Legos, you create your avatar and you can go into all these mini games. And a lot of them are, very quick, geared towards young kids who have a short attention span. You can easily jump into or jump out of a game. A lot of the games are really good. I played my fair share of Roblox because my little brother plays a lot. He's one of these he's one of these kids that's on there and all his friends are on there. And there's there's Arsenal, which is pretty much like team deathmatch.
Oh, cool.
There are really kind of scary, like horror-based story games where you go into a house and the first night you have to board up the windows, and then there's a killer that you have to escape from. And then the next night you have to oh no, you have to go to the store to get supplies because you need medical kits. And then the third night the killers are in your house and everyone has to go to the basement and kill the killers. Yes, it's very elaborate. It's surprisingly elaborate. A lot of the games are actually really fun. And I'm not surprised that a lot of kids are playing this. It's also very easy on your computer. So kids who just might have a laptop that they do schoolwork on, even if it's a pretty old laptop, yes, exactly. Wow. You can play this, even with slow internet. While it can still be frustrating, they can still play this, which I think is also why a lot of kids, are on this. I mean, when I was a kid, my family computer was just a normal computer to use Microsoft Word on. So what I could play on there was pretty limited. And I think, a lot of kids, have a similar situation. You got to see me crank 90s in Roblox, though. Roblox best horror game.
That's hilarious. But so is this sort of like Dreams in a sense that we were talking about, where the element of creating your own gaming experience is there?
Yes, there is a tool where you can create your own games in Roblox, but it is pretty hard. Or I was only in it for 5 minutes, but it's pretty painstaking in how you design everything, and it's not that easy to do, at least from what I've seen. So technically you could create whatever game you want, but it's a little difficult.
Wow. But this is also really, it's not shocking, but that's a huge number. 120 million players.
A lot.
I mean, wow. I just processing that for a moment is that's crazy to think of, but that also makes sense, especially here in the US. COVID's taken longer, unfortunately, to combat. And that has led to now having to figure out what's the space in order for kids to still socialize, but, maintain social distancing for everyone's safety. And I'm curious to see if we're going to start to hear Roblox use that Fortnite-like live event kind of stuff, because this seems like a space where maybe you need to have, I'm just using this as an extreme example, a field trip, but it takes place within Roblox, and it's a form of educating those who use it. As you were saying, you don't really need a top of the line laptop to be able to handle this.
You don't. I think it's cool, as you said, to have maybe a field trip in it, because what's really nice about it is in each mini game there's a chat that goes on, so you can chat to anyone in there. Some games are more chatty than others,
right? And
people are generally nice or silly. There's seldom anyone who's a hater. I don't think you really see the levels of toxicity that you see in other games. Kids, they're there to have fun. They're not there to bully other people. Maybe Roblox is geared towards the age right before the toxicity creeps out, but so. It's generally pretty okay. I think the social aspect is really important, just being able to hang out with someone. And also, if you're hanging out over Zoom, there's kind of only so much you can do, especially if you're a kid. I mean, kids don't necessarily just want to chat face to face all day. They want to do something. They want to play a game. And so this is a way for them to really keep in touch, and to also have fun at home, or at least as much as they can. That's
amazing and awesome on Roblox. I hope they continue to just keep that game getting updated in a way that fulfills the 120 million people who are playing it. So Wow, that's amazing.
Amazing to Roblox. So our next topic is Samurai Jack Battle Through Time launches August 21st for all of you Samurai Jack fans out there.
Anyone in the chat a fan of Samurai Jack or was a fan of Samurai Jack? I am genuinely curious because I was a huge fan of Samurai Jack.
So Adult Swim Games, in partnership with Samurai Jack creator Genndy Tartakovsky and developer Soleil Games, has announced that the action platformer Samurai Jack Battle Through Time will launch worldwide on August 21st for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows PC via the Epic Game Store and Steam for $39.99.
So it is based on the Emmy award-winning series Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is the great stoic hero's untold final adventure with a script from the series head writer Derek Bachman. Trapped by his arch nemesis Aku in an alternate timeline during their final confrontation, Samurai Jack must team up with his closest allies against his most notorious enemies to return home.
Made for fans of Samurai Jack and action games alike, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time features classic combat and gameplay, stylized 3D visuals, and the show's renowned blend of humor and drama. Explore the fantastic world of the show, unlock new skills and combos, and slice and dice your foes with over a dozen unique melee and ranged weapons. And just looking at the gameplay, this is exactly what I would want from a Samurai Jack game. I feel like this is a great rendition of the game, or
it looks
the
like
series
the cartoon
in a game. It does. It really does.
Oh my god. And so if you are a Samurai Jack fan and you want to see more, you can tune in to see the exclusive behind the scenes gameplay footage and interviews with Tartakovsky, Bachman, and more during Adult Swim Con, which is a celebration of all things Adult Swim, which airs tomorrow or starts to air tomorrow from July 23rd to the 25th here on Twitch. And the Samurai Jack Battle Through Time panel will kick off on Friday, July 24th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, and that is twitch.tv/Adult Swim.
Pre-orders for Samurai Jack Battle Through Time are available now on Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Windows PC, again via the Epic Games Store.
This is awesome. I'm a huge fan of seeing these like older loves of mine cartoons, these series, these animes. It was like when the Afro Samurai game came out several years ago. I was a huge fan of that. It had some, setbacks in terms of overall, game design, but this looks really strong as I look at it. I'm like, this is a perfect world for a video game, and I'm so excited to get to play as Samurai Jack. I really am.
It looks so cool. And as Kai said, I was thinking the same thing. You're like, oh, Adult Swim has a Twitch channel?
Yeah.
I think Twitch is becoming more and more mainstream. I mean, I was listening to a political podcast and they were talking about forms of media and they mentioned Twitch in there. And I was like, really? Like, wow. I mean, I'm always on Twitch, but it was just so like strange to hear Twitch, thrown around, in a political podcast. And again, I wouldn't think that Adult Swim has a Twitch channel, but I mean, it makes sense if they're going to work on a video game and promote that video game. I think that Twitch is becoming more and more mainstream for better or for worse. So all of y'all Twitch chatters, I know that we all, or at least I talk in emotes, and I think more people will understand those emotes. But I think there will be a wave of more mainstream kind of people coming to this platform.
Yeah, and I'll say this to the Samurai Jack fans that are in here: the one thing about this game that the news article stood out to me was this is his final adventure. I want to believe that there is a resurgence of Samurai Jack to bring the show back. I didn't mean to Dr. Seuss that sentence. But I would say is like this, if this is the final adventure for Samurai Jack and they're doing it in this, video game format, what does that mean for other series that we've seen that could do the same thing where maybe it ended too soon or the feeling of like a Cowboy Bebop video game, right? You look at some of these other animes that could do very well by using this format as a way to tell the final story.
I think so too, and this is also a cool way to kind of have like a spin-off, or in an anime there might be like a movie that's kind of a separate story, but with SAO in some of their games they have kind of it like goes down a different path, and it's really made for fans because I mean it might be a fault, but if you don't know Sword Art Online Alicization and you play the Alicization like chorus game, you're going to be like, what's happening here? But if you've already seen the show, you're like, oh, I totally get this. Cool, like new story, that they're exploring through this video game format versus, an anime video format.
And that's really interesting too, because that kind of goes into the conversation we've had about seeing the animators jumping the former animation places jumping over to video games as a way to continue to tell stories, but now to do it in this interactive format. Is what do those individuals start to do when they start to see these other IPs get created? Do the gears start turning in their head of how they could do this as well? I hope so, and I hope that this is a trend that we start to see more of, especially with the next gen consoles right around the corner.
Me too, but that does bring us to the end of the news. As Keem says, the news ends too soon.
Aww.
A whole hour ends too soon. And thank you all for joining us today. It was really fun talking VR, talking Roblox, talking Sucker Punch today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all to the DGN fam that have been hanging out with us today, throwing in amazing comments and joining in on the conversation. Please do remember, if you are watching us live, you can go watch our previous episodes on our YouTube channel, and you can like and subscribe us there. Also, give us a follow here on Twitch, and tell your friends about us to come and join the DGN fam as well. Tomorrow is going to be a fun day because we know that event's taking place with Microsoft, so we're going to learn some things there, and we're also going to do our Thursday throwback to On This Day in Gaming.
And instead of posting videos on my channel, they'll now be posted on the DGN channel, YouTube channel, that will be, dedicated to just our VOD. So we'll be linking that soon, probably later today. But thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to follow and subscribe if you're on YouTube. I mean, also subscribe if you're on Twitch, but I'm not going to pressure you to spend any money. Thank you so much for joining us for Daily Gaming News. I am Kaisa.
I am Marrone. We appreciate you all, DGN fam, and hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. See you next time.